Hello everybody and welcome to Arganian's Puzzle Box. In episode 3 of our tutorial video series on how to make this sword, we will be exploring the methods of UV unwrapping and retopology cleanup for our sword. Now I have brought it over into Substance Paint just to briefly show some of the how it's going to sort of like look in the end once we completely texture it. But this is at this point cleaned up and also UV unwrapped. But this is what we're going to explore within the tutorial today, how to unwrap it, and as I said, how to get it fixed in terms of its topology. Now we are going to move quite quickly through this. We're not going to go into extreme detail on how to unwrap it because right now, in this day and age, you've got so many ways of approaching this. You've even got auto unwrap and substance painted if you want to, and I think it's very important to know the basics. But I think properly unwrapping an object and doing retopology, for an actual production sort of piece, it does require a lot more time than what is being invested in this tutorial. But even so, I'm sure you will learn quite a few things. I have during this period. So I've just started off my Blender application and I've imported the high poly and the low poly that we've exported in our last episode where we've sculpted them. And now it's time to optimize the low poly. Now, as you can see, both the high poly and the low poly are obviously overlapping each other, which is quite nice, and they're definitely looking good. So we're now going to deactivate the high poly collection and just leave the low poly in here. So our low poly is quite a bit on the increased amount of polygon size. It's definitely got quite a few polygons in there, so we want to optimize it. We can see down here how many polygons we have in the scene currently, so that's 25,000 faces. And if we if we press tab on this particular object and we have a look over here, we can see that 7,340 faces are from this model alone. So at this point, I'm just going to select the head and the handle and just press backspace to isolate them together. And this will help me to look down here on the handle and understand how many polygons can actually be removed from there that are not actually going to be seen at all. So if we press Alt Z to we press tab to go into edit mode, now we can see the wireframe. So with the wireframe visible, we can press Alt Z on the keyboard to see through. And now we can have a look as to what loop from here we could remove. So you can see that loop over there would be quite okay. And everything else inside of it. So we can actually go in here and just select just select all these loops. So be very careful with the selection. And if we take all those loops out, so dissolve the edges, or dissolve we can just say delete the edges, it will take that geometry away from there. So now if I press Alt Z again, you can see how we've taken the geometry away from that point, but we clearly have a bit of a problem here because these edges have remained and we also can see through, which is obviously a problem. So we're just going to go back, and we obviously have a bit of a problem in there. What I'm going to do is isolate the handle on its own, okay? And I just want to take all these polygons together. So I'm just going to go in this view, going to go to face mode and just change my selection to this circle. So now I can just go around like that, and basically just select all of these quite easily. Again, we may want to come out of isolation just to have a look and understand if we're perfectly matching. So just come out of the isolation, looking at this. You see the blade is also covering a surface there, so that's that's about it really. We can completely remove these faces now. Sorry, not the edges, the faces. Right, so with that done, we've already made our overall mesh smaller. Now we want to look at other areas that we could potentially get rid of. So for example, this loop here, dissolve the edge, or better yet, start off with this edge over here and then this one, and then you have this one here to support the structure. And really at this point it's just a balancing act of just removing edges as you go along. Generally you want to do the whole loops, so you know, as a loop that goes all the way around. So for example here it is a bit difficult because you've got these sort of like ending around here, and if you delete all of this, then in essence you could create like these n-gons here, which is not ideal, and you'd have to go through manually retopologizing a lot. But because speed is of the essence here, we're going to move a lot quicker through this, and rather than dealing with those issues and retopologizing, you know, to that extent, we're just going to move a lot faster for things that can be procedurally just removed. Like these edges here, for example, you know, quite simple, straightforward, not a problem. You know, it's all done now. Then we can have a look at other loops. Again, just it's very important to just Shift Alt click on loops just to see how they connect and see if they actually have any use in those areas. Okay, so I'm just going to speed up the video now while doing this because it is quite a bit of, you know, quite tedious to watch. One more thing that we want to do as well is go into edge mode and select the entire half of our mesh like that, but it's very difficult to get right because we have all this you know, this divide here that we're going to do. You can see that it's just sort of like ignoring part of these faces, so it's very important to be very thorough with this. Select all these faces like that, and once all of that is done, you'll see in just a second. So all of those are selected, and then we go down here, which is obviously a lot easier to select. Once that's done, just delete all the faces because we're going to add a mirror, which whatever work we've done on one side will also mirror to the other one, which is quite easy. Now we can see over here we have a bit of a problem. There's clearly some sort of an issue, and we want to fix this now before it becomes a problem later. If we move this, just ensure you got the proportional editing off. If we move this like that, it will be a bit of a problem, but actually we can just merge these together, and we do get a triangle here, but it's not the end of the world, and it's in an area that's not very visible either. But just by doing that sort of change, we only now have half of the problem to deal with, so to speak. So it's important to have a look and see where you might have some other issues, like for example right here, there's clearly something going on. The mesh just doesn't seem to have properly aligned itself. So again, if you wouldn't have done the change that we just did earlier, then you would have had to fix this on twice the areas. And you can actually, if you think about it, you can actually do on this side, you could get these separated as well, just delete it and then mirror it again, because that will definitely make things easier for you in the long run. So again, it's really up to you how you want to separate these. And normally I definitely go this way as well, and just deleting everything. Overall just makes things a lot easier for me. So if I do that and take these polygons over here, take these polygons as well, these as well, and then all the way up here, and these, and just delete. Now I'm just left with these problems, these sort of areas here where there's clearly an issue, but again I'll just merge them in order to balance the the shape. Again, delete this and select that vertex, bring it over here, not at center, sorry, just select these two edges, merge them at last. I really like the merge function in Blender, it's very, very useful. See over here, same thing, but on the other hand, we just want to bring this over. Wow. Yeah, probably like that. Again, not at center, we want to merge that last. So this is sort of like what the Zremeshed does sometimes. Some of these will definitely have some issues, and you will be forced into a bit of a in a situation where you're gonna have triangles. But again, you can just do manual retopology in those areas just to clean it up. I'm not sure what's happened there. Okay, so now we successfully separated the mesh, and all we need to do is just work with this side. And obviously, after we do that, we can just simply, export it. Well, not export it, sorry, but we can simply mirror it after that. So probably going to stick with what I've got over here like this, and now we're just going to move on to speed things up while working on this. So now that we have our model, more or less made more efficient. Again, there's a lot more work that could be done here to change the flow of a lot of these edges to make it even better. And as I said, just retopologize it a lot more. But again, that takes time, and it's one of those things that you just don't have during a tutorial. But areas like this, for example, you could definitely work on improving this topology by just removing some edges and doing some different connections. But it's not complicated, as you've seen. It's just really going backwards and forwards into these motions of just achieving the results that you want. Now with that done, we can go ahead and add a mirror modifier, which automatically mirrors it on this side, on the x-axis. And if we press the z-axis as well, you can now see it mirroring on all sides. Now one nice thing about this is, with the mirror deactivated, we could actually go in and unwrap this model the way you can see it over here, and then what happens is what you've done on this side, all the other three sides will have the same effect. But we don't want to do that. What we want to do is just deactivate the z-axis and just have it mirroring only on one side like that. Then with it, in this way, out of edit mode, we can just press Control A while hovering on top of the modifier, or just going up here and selecting Apply. And now we've basically merged the two together, which is quite good. Now with them, the reason why I've merged them is because I want to have all of this unwrapped as itself, not to have only half of this be representative of all four sides, because what happens is you're going to have this seam running across right where the front of the blade is, and you just don't want that. But with that done, we can now add a new modifier, which is a mirror, and we say we want it only on the z-axis like that. So let's just deactivate the mirror for a bit. With this done, we can open our unwrap panel, so our UV editor, go into edit mode, and we can start unwrapping this model. Another thing that we want to do is add a new material, which is already named, handle low, which is great. We're just going to keep that. And with that material done, we can start unwrapping. So if we go into vertex mode, we can just press A on the keyboard to select everything. And if you press the letter U on the keyboard, it will allow you to unwrap. And this is what we get. Now, based on this, you may think that this is a good unwrap. You probably just won't be able to tell. But if you press N on the keyboard and we go into view, we have this option in here called overlays, and just activate stretching. And with that done, if we go out of, if we sort of like, go into edge mode or something, you can now you're clearly be able to see where the textures are stretching. So what you want is the color blue going across everywhere for it to look nice and tidy. But as you can see, it's not that big of a problem what we're looking at right now. I mean, this we only have a handful of issues, and it's mainly into these sort of like corners over here. So it's not the end of the world, so to speak. But again, you can play around with these and try and fix them. But what I'm going to say is, you're not going to fix it by having them this way. You're probably going to have to start cutting inside the, creating seams everywhere. So one thing that you could do is, for example, you can take this side over here, find the sort of like the degree like that, that point over there, or maybe this one. It potentially could just be this one. It really depends on how the mesh flows. Actually, the point is where we have the problem, so we're just going to take that one. Press U on the keyboard, and you have this option in here called Mark Seam. Now I want to go back into polygon mode and select everything. If we press Unwrap again, then what we're seeing right now is a different kind of unwrap method. It's because it's removed the top that we just cut out and put it on its own little island. So, and that makes sense because we have almost a hard edge here, and that actually makes sense to do. It's definitely quite useful to do it this way. So you can create these sort of seams everywhere you want, especially where you're seeing these problems like what we're seeing over into here. I'm just going to press this button up here. When you do that, you can see the islands without actually, when you select it, they don't just disappear. So if we select that, we can see where our biggest problem is, which is over here. So we may want, for example, to create another seam running across, maybe through here. So then I can just go this way and maybe this way as well. So let's just have a look and see what happens. I'm just going to mark the seam over there. Again, go into edit mode, select everything and press U. If you hover over here and press U, it will just simply unwrap directly. And now we can see that we definitely have a bit better, over here the stretching is about gone. Over here is, well, it's still present, but again, you can fix it by cutting some more. One easy way of cutting would be straight through the middle, but it's, that seam will definitely be quite visible if you do that. So it's very important to mitigate, to stop cutting in areas where it's quite in front of the work that you're doing. So for the time being, I'm just gonna let this in this way for the time being. But what I'll do, I'll select everything in here and just drag it out of the box, because we may want to add multiple models into the same into the same model. Now, because you have the mirror modifier on, what happens is when you apply the mirror modifier, you're going to have this side unwrapped as well, and it's going to be overlapping right over here, which is quite nice because whatever you do on one side will also happen on the other side as well. So now let's just move down to another part of our mesh. So we're now on with the head. I'm just going to press backspace to have only the head being displayed. And to begin with, I'm just going to go into edit mode, edges, and just select everything that's straight on in the middle like that, which is going to be quite easy for this particular mesh. So I've got everything selected, and now I can just delete all the faces. So now we have the mesh only showing up on one side, which is great. And at this point, we again can go on and just make some fixes. Like for example, right here, there's no point in them being that way. You can just merge them. Again, Zremeshed is doing a lot of good work over here, you know, trying to fix this, but it's not going to have them all perfectly lined up. So I'm just gonna go into vertex mode and just select everything on this side, delete all those sides as well. I just really, when we play with symmetrical meshes, I think it's very important that you just delete, you know, all the sides that you don't want to work on for now, and just use mirror later on. It definitely helps to do this. But one very important part of this is to ensure that your origin of the mesh is right smack in the middle of the world, pretty much, in order for this to work properly. Right, so with this done now, all we can see here is we have this sort of polygon that's definitely going to get in our way. So I'm just going to delete it. And now with that point, I can just drag it across like this, make sure it's right there in the middle. Okay, like that. And now that's fixed. We then have this issue over here, so quite a bit of overlap, you know, some vertices that should just be merged together. So we select these two and we merge them. And then, you know, we have these points over here as well. We might want to merge these as well, see, like that. And then these 2 points merged as well. Other than that, everything else looks to be quite clean, so we should be okay. Now it's time to go into edge mode and start looking at what edges we can just cut out from our overall design, because they're just not useful to us. I'm just going to merge these two viewports. So, you know, looking at this is not the right candidate, but this one is. You can see how it sort of like runs across like that and just simply, you know, does all this shape. Now, one thing to note here actually is that we could get rid of all these polygons because they're going to be hidden. So if we go out, you can see you can't really see those polygons. So, you know, it's very important that we're very, you know, very much aware of what polygons we can take out, what we need to keep. So you see, if I go over here and just select all of these polygons, for example, I've got to be careful with my selection, obviously, but if I just go around like that, you know, you got to be careful with how you select them, but should be able to get away with quite a little bit in here. Yeah, something like that. And just select all of these. Obviously we don't want any of those at the back. Okay. We press Control and just hover over like that, it will just deselect what you don't want to have selected, obviously. So as you can see, there's no real problem with going even deeper in here. Probably something like that. And then, you know, take all these polygons from here as well. Doesn't have to be that neat, it really depends on how much time you want to invest into this. So you can see what we've done here. Okay, just ensure that we don't take these polygons. So again, just get out of this mode and start cleaning the selection up. So that looks okay. We're just gonna go all the way to this point. So yeah, something like that, and just select these edges over here as well, just like that. Yeah, probably like that. Should be fine. And then we want to take these edges from here and deselect these, but then continue on all the way here at the back. So with these now selected, go out just to have a look, and you can see that in some areas we probably came in a bit too much, so we may want to sort of like deselect some of these so they're not noticeable, that they're going to disappear. So we've got to clean this area up. Only what's visible. It's very important to just look. It doesn't really matter if you're not perfectly aligning here, unless like you've got a very strict poly count budget. So I'm just going to delete all of those, and then I'm just going to have a look to see what else can be seen or cannot be seen. So for example, none of these could be seen. You may want to switch over into, selecting by polygon, like this. Obviously, that should be okay there. We don't want any of these to be selected, so I'm just going to select them. Okay, yeah, I mean, these in here potentially should be selected. So you see how it's sort of like protrudes out through here. So you've got to ensure that you're not getting any of these polygons from here that are obviously going to be quite visible if they're missing. So yeah, I think that looks good. We're just going to delete all of them. Now go back into isolating this object. I'm not sure right here at the edge. I think we need the polygons. Let's just do a selection and have a look. Yeah, we definitely need the polygons there. So now go back into edge mode and just have a look what happens if you select the way we selected earlier. See if that's going to be a problem again. But obviously we need to find the right sort of, let's call it a vein. So for example, this potentially can be one. Sorry, not the faces. Dissolve edges, let's see. So that's obviously causing quite a bit of issues because we have this going on right here. So you've got to find the right edges to remove, like this one, for example. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. This one obviously has a continuity all the way here, but if we take it off, then we've now fixed some of these areas from here. We've got a bit of overlap right in here, and we definitely don't want that. So by moving it out, just fixing the edge a little bit in there. We may want to select this loop, just going this way and then all the way to the top and dissolve it, which again is going to reduce the number of our polygons. Probably these parts here you want to remove. Maybe this one as well. This one in the center, definitely. See, this one is running all the way here, so it's not ideal to remove just because of how much cleanup you would have to do after it. So that's another one with a lot of cleanup. This is another one with a lot of cleanup. So you gotta be very much aware of what you're going to remove. So we could do this one, see, but now we've got an n-gon going on here. So it's all about, you can do something like this. And you can use a knife tool to just cut in here, create a triangle, but then you don't have to do any sort of a lot of modifications to this mesh, to this part. So you kind of can get away with that quite easily. Look at this loop, for example. I mean, this would remove quite a little bit. We just don't know the effects, but when you look at it after you removed it, it's not that bad. It's actually quite passable. So, just resolve a lot of issues there by removing that edge. This one here, this one potentially, yeah. So this is how this cleanup goes. I'm just going to do a bit more cleanup on it, and then just move on to the next part. So as you can see, what we've got here, we've got a problem where the mesh is not actually fully connected. Sometimes this can happen when you use a mirror, so it's very important that you visually check. I think visually is the best cue for where you have an issue. You're just going to see like a cut in the mesh. It will just look like it's not completely combining. So you just got to be careful and just look at it, and you should be able to notice it. But this is our head now done. Now we obviously want to do a unwrap as well. So we're just going to go over here, UV editor, go into edit mode, and select everything. Then use the unwrap function, and this is what we're seeing. So just like before, activate the overlays, very important. Press this button over here. Okay. So as you can see, there's actually almost no stretching that we will have a problem with. So there's no real problem in just not doing any sort of UVs. But if you really want to clean this mesh up, then you've got to start creating seams where where it really makes sense. Like for example here. So you could probably do a seam over there, but it's again, it's really up to you. So for example, what I would do here, I would cover the seam sort of like when it goes downwards. So what I mean by this is, I do a seam over here, which is a bit more hidden, which would make sense. Or I could do a seam over here, for example, like that, and just sort of connect this. So then just say mark, where is it? Mark seam. So the reason why I'm doing this is because this could be an entirely different type of texture in there, connecting. And then around the eyes as well, I could just come in here and just say, I want these eyes, sort of like, yeah, I could probably come around this way, something like that, maybe. That could make sense as well. But again, it's no real need, as there's not really a lot of stretching going on over here. Again, if you don't want any stretching, then you can just start cutting through it, but then you will get seams. So I think doing it this way, leaving it like this, you won't really get any sort of problems with seams that are quite visible. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't look bad at all, actually. So we can just keep this for now, and then we're just going to move on to the next model. So now we've reached that part of the tutorial where we're going to deal with the horns. And I'm going to isolate our horns, go into edit mode, and just select one of the horns really. This is the only one that we want to work on. The other horns can actually be deleted. There's no point in any of them to exist in our scene. So I can just delete them and just focus on this one. Now, the overall geometry of the horn should be quite straightforward and easy to sort of fix. As you can see, Zremeshed has really tried over here to sort of try and match that geometry that we had based on our sculpt, which is a bit unfortunate that there is no option to tell Zremeshed to just create a mesh approximate to what you were trying to achieve just by the general silhouette of it. I think probably in the future they will have something like this for it, but unfortunately right now they just don't. So right here what I'm doing is I'm marking the sort of surface that I can sort of take out of the mesh that's not going to be visible if I delete, basically. So though all of those can be deleted, and then again I can just go and select all these edges. Now I do come out of edit mode quite a lot, and that's mainly because I'm just checking the geometry and how it looks like, just to ensure that we're following a certain, we're following what the course of the actual mesh. Now it's going to be very difficult to find something here that can be removed running across the whole side of the geometry, just of the horn, just as I said, just because Zremeshed has done all it could to sort of align everything here to fit all those small details that we have on our cylinder. But that's fine, we still removed quite a bit from it, and by the looks of it we don't have any n-gons or anything like that present in here, so that should be okay. So with that done this way, we can now add, well, we can now unwrap it really. So let's just start the unwrap procedure and have a look how it looks like, and obviously it's very bad. So what we want to do is we first want to create a seam, maybe here at the back, through which the entire cylinder is going to be split in half. So you can see what we've done there, and there's actually no stretching whatsoever, so it actually looks quite good. Well, it's probably some light stretching around here, but nothing noticeable. So yeah, that was quite simple, wasn't it? And the horn itself, I'm definitely gonna go with just a, a mirror that works on all sides. So same sort of UV space for all the horns should be fine. Okay, and now we've got the horns done, and it's time to go to the blade side of things, which the blade's a bit more complicated. As you can see, we've got some really nasty errors here that have been forming, and there's a lot of geometry in the blade that we just probably don't need. One thing that we could do is just use our low poly blade that we already made when we exported the mesh out. So if we try to fix the blade, let's just isolate it and have a look. All I would need to do really is just go in here and have a look at these, these vertices over here that are causing the issue. So I would definitely need to select all of these. For example, I have no idea why they're so, why they're strangling about here, clearly with no purpose. Now, oddly enough, I can't even select these, right? Delete the edges. Okay, as you can see how there's a lot of, just overall, a lot of issues with this mesh. Even if we try to clean it up, we just don't know how well it's going to look like. In essence, what you probably want to do is just really cut off all these points here. So it's really, really problematic. But if we go on to the, I think I've saved it over here, yeah, the base mesh. So I've got this blade over here called blade low. I'm just going to make a duplicate of it and just bring it over into this collection. And now with the blade low, we can see what we've sort of, what we have. So this is a lot cleaner than that, definitely. But we also want to bring our high poly in and just get the blade from the high poly, so we can have a look and see how, maybe you remember that we have actually thickened the blade inside Zbrush, so these will definitely not fit together. Now this is going to take a bit just because the high poly mesh needs to be loaded in. So there we have it. Okay, and now I'm just going to keep the blade high, which I'm actually going to drag over here and just close off the high poly for now. So we've got the blade high, and we also got this blade low over here. Very importantly, you can actually see it right now. You can see it, how thick the high polygon blade is compared to the other one. So we're just gonna go into scale mode, and what we want to do obviously is just go, you know, scale it on the probably on the x-axis or something like that. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to be working for me for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'm just going to select everything. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and we want to scale on this axis so we can drag it out until we can actually see it sort of melding in with a blade height, something like that. Okay, so that should be fine. Now, the only real problem that we have here is this centerpiece, which is obviously a lot. It's got all these details on the high poly. So at this point, it's probably time to add some loops in, quite a few loops in order to work with this. You know, try to improve it, try to get it to fit. So, you know, if you select the entire loop, then at that point, you want to probably scale on the y-axis, make it a bit thicker, but if you do that, then obviously it just thickens the whole thing together. So this is why you want to add all the loops that you need. So one thing that I would do is just select both of these points and try and match them up with where the straps are. So this is part of let's call it a bit of retopology, but it's not, well, it's not perfect as you can imagine, but it definitely will get the job done. You know, there's nothing bad in doing some manual retopology in this way, which, by the way, I think it's going to disappear in time. Like this, the software is now becoming more, you know, better and better at creating low poly geometry of your meshes, and I think this overall is just going to go away one day. You're not going to have to do any retopology at all, which, you know, for artists such as myself, that's definitely a very good thing. I do not like to retopology. I don't think I've actually met somebody who likes to retopologize meshes. So something like that, and then we want to bring this up here. Okay, and like that. So once we have this, you know, these sort of points lined up, like what we just did, we can have a look at, you know, beefing them up a little bit. So what I mean by this, we can actually go in here and select some of these points and try and increase the thickness of it. So, you know, we can select them by faces, and then just go in here and, you know, you can do something like that. But again, it's not ideal, because what you're getting is you're also getting you know, other loops that are affected as well. So this is where you may want to come in and just add supportive loops. So maybe do something like that, and then when you go into edge mode, select into face mode, and you select all of those. If you bring them outwards just on the y-axis, then in theory you should be able to fill that in, which again, it just doesn't look too good, does it? You see, it's just not fitting properly with the overall mesh. So let's just try and think about what we can do here. If we continue down this path, it's just not going to look too great, but I have a plan. So I'm going to select all of these faces from here, so all of them like that, and I'm going to press P on the keyboard and separate by selection. Then I'm going to go on to my newly created mesh, which is this. Yeah, I'm actually, oh sorry, you know what, let me just go back because I've messed up something. I should just get rid of what I've added here, this geometry that I've added here. I simply don't need it. Okay, so just remove those extra edges. Okay, so that should be fine. We'll just leave it like that. And now select all of them and separate by selection. And at this point, I just want to go to this section over here. Okay, With this done, I want to now add a subdivision surface modifier, which will make everything a lot smoother, but just use a simple approach. And then add a shrink wrap modifier and select the blade high, like that. Okay, so if we take this blade and just separate them together, which I am trying. Okay, so as I've said, these two together, and I'll separate them. This is what we get. Can now go into edit mode, activate on cage just to see the effects. So this is what we're getting now with this level of subdivisions. Now we can increase the level of subdivisions, but make it fit even better. But if we apply the subdivision, this is how many polygons we have. Okay, so that's quite a lot of polygons. So let's just try and go back and just decrease the level of subdivisions again to 1. Always when you apply the modifiers and undo, it will take some time for Blender to actually catch on. So yeah, I'm still waiting for this. Right, there we have it. We've got our subdivision. So if we apply it now and we go, this is how many polygons we have, and it's not too bad, to be honest, and I think it will look okay. We don't need it to push through this far out either, so we could potentially just grab it, make it fit a bit better, and maybe just if you add over here, see, I've just added that edge there and it already fixed that part of the mesh. Maybe one here as well. Okay, so with this done, we can apply the shrink wrap, so then it saves it that way. Let's take the blade low out of the equation and let's come out of the isolation. I do want to shade smooth this object. Let's just have a look. Yeah, it doesn't seem to want over here to. Yeah, there we go. Right. Okay. So now it's shade smooth. It's shade. The shade smooth works quite fine. And this is the the blade low also needs to be selected and apply shade smooth to it. As you can see, these points, they do sort of match up quite nicely. So rather than uniting the meshes again, I'm just going to select all these points up here and really just take them on the Z-axis and push them inside the blade like that. Okay. And then we want to do the same thing down here as well. Push them inside the blade on the Z-axis. And that will be it, really. That should fix it. Okay, so we've got our blade low. Let's just bring the blade high in as well. And the rest of it should match up quite nicely and quite accurately. And that just brings us to the next point, which is basically we've got the blade done. So at this stage, we want these two to merge, but before we do that, let's just isolate our normal blade only. And we definitely want to delete half of it. So just be very careful with how you select it. See, this is not going to work out very well for us right here. If I delete these points, this is what we get. Shouldn't be that much of an issue, but we're just gonna have to do a bit of cleanup after. So I'm selecting again half. Okay, maybe this isn't working too well over here, where I've deleted it. So let me just bring back that half. Yeah, it's going to be a bit difficult to split this in half. Let me just try something else. If I add a modifier, a mirror modifier, and I say that I want to, mirror only the Z-axis, and then select on cage, then have I got any issues? Looks like I don't, so we should be fine. Okay, so that's great. We're just going to use this without cutting it, and it should blend okay, but we'll see in just a little bit. So let's just go into front view, select everything like that, and then press U and let's mark our seam. Now this is obviously a problem as well, always is a problem. Let's just try and mark our seam by first marking up all the edges across the blade. So I think it would definitely make more sense to do that, and mark seam over here, as you can see. And then you also want to mark over here and running all the way at the top as well. You want to mark the seam over into here and here as well, and all the way at the bottom. And then the same thing here. You know, it's going to be a bit tedious, this, just because we don't have a the problem that we have is we don't have another loop right here smack in the middle, but in theory we should be able to add it. Yeah, I think that would be a better solution, so add it. But then it's also important to understand, you know, where it's gone to, so should be okay now. And again, in vertex mode, just ensure that you select the middle only, and this is going to be very difficult because we have these very small parts now. Select them and then select them again like that, and just really be very careful with how you select them. See, I've not been careful and this is what happens. Right, okay, so we've got them all selected and we can delete them, so that's half of the mesh deleted, which is quite good. And now we've got to do the same thing for the bottom here. So I have the two loops added on each side, and now I can go into vertex mode and sort of, you know, really try yet again to be able to select all of this and delete it properly. And I always hate these selections, but one thing that Blender does very well is that it allows you to go over here and just select these points, and that should take all those faces together. I must say Blender has a lot of options that other 3D softwares that I've used do not, like 3ds Max. They seem to be way behind on these things, and considering that 3ds Max also costs a fortune, I don't understand how those guys are, you know, how Autodesk is still getting revenue off of it, because it's just, you know, as I've said, going on with these guys seems to be the better option with Blender. Right, okay, so this is the point where it looks like we have a bit of a problem. So I'm just going to delete these two faces and just leave that gap over there, which we can fix later on. Okay, so I'm not sure where this point is coming from. Right, I have no idea why that's happening. Okay, so we deleted everything. Now it's time to select them and unwrap like this. And as you can see, there's no real stretching that will be noticeable. Maybe just a bit here, but these are these two corners, which is not going to be that much of a problem. And they all sort of stem from this point. So if you really want to fix those, just select this edge, and this edge. Okay, and perhaps, yeah, we can go across this way. Okay, so we're sort of like separating these hard edges here between them. And with those selected, just press U and mark seam. Now we can select everything and unwrap again, or at least I'm trying to. Okay, so now with that unwrapped, that should be fine. And we've got these elements in here, which are those parts that we just taken out. Okay, now I can select all of these and bring them out, take them outside. And we obviously want to add a mirror modifier on the Z axis, and most likely we're going to see a bit of an issue down here. Yeah, as you can see it, and this we're going to have to fix once we commit to the mirror modifier, which we will do once we decide where does the sword go when it comes to actual UV texture space. Okay, so now we've got this part that we need to fix. So let me just take the blade high out of the equation. So we've got the blade low, we've got this part over here, this part, okay? And for me, really, since it's mirroring on both sides, we could potentially just go with the usual cut in half sort of approach. I'm just not entirely sure if it will work all right if we cut it in half. I'm hoping that there's not going to be any sort of stray polygons that are going to be selected while I do this. Hopefully not, but we'll probably just be able to see once we delete them. So I've now selected the entire center, so deleting those faces, and as you can see, it's not really any noticeable sort of effects apart maybe from here, but I can pull that in like that, and yeah, it's not too bad. It's not amazing, but it's not too bad. Okay, so with that done, because this doesn't have any hard edge, I can just unwrap and it will be good. So pull it out again, add a, well actually we don't need to add a mirror modifier, because if we join these, let me just try it out. I believe if we join these two objects together, yeah, the mirror is automatically applied from the blade. Okay, so we've got all that done. As you can see, we have a bit of a problem here, so I just need to select, sorry, I'm just gonna select all this element and bring it up here. Because we haven't applied the mirror, it's quite easy to move this without any sort of consequence. So that's now done, and now is the point to sort of decide how and which of these meshes go together. And one of the easy things to do is just ensure that you select everything. Let's just call this blade, well actually we have another blade low here, don't we? So I'm just going to rename that to blade low 123. Okay, and just hide it, and then I'm just going to take blade low, rename it to blade low like this, and select all the meshes. We can go into edit mode, we can see all the UV islands basically. So what I'm thinking here is I'm going to put the head mesh, so this one, I'm just going to press right click, and you've got an option in here. Sorry, if you go to UV, you've got this pack island, so it puts it over in there, which is fine. And then I can take this one from here, so select all of these, and the same thing, I can just say pack island. Now obviously we've got a bit of a problem here because it's overlaying with the other one. So if we select both of these and we say pack islands again, and this should be okay, but there's obviously a problem with the sizes because that pommel is a lot more than the head itself. So if we say average island scales, again, it's not going to fix our problem, trust me. So we just want to see how we can how best to sort of work these out. So we're just going to bring it out, take this part, pack island. So this is the biggest that it can get, and then I can just drop this in here as well, potentially make it smaller, so probably something like that. Okay, and we just got to look at what else we can bring in there. So most likely the horns can probably go in there as well, but it's all about how we position them or how small do you want to make them. Because I think if we put them in here, actually we're just not going to get enough texture geometry, sorry texture quality. We can split the head in two, and that gives us more space in here, but that would also mean to have that seam running across. So it's all about what you really want to do, what are you trying to achieve here. So I've decided to actually leave the head and the pommel in this particular setup. So I can actually go out of edit mode, select the pommel itself, and then the head. I can rename this to, well actually I can leave it to head low. I can select my pommel and just go in here and select head low as well, and now they're both on the same texture material, which is fine. So both of these will show up in Substance Painter as one texture tile. Now I can select the horns and perhaps the handle. So horns and handle, and I can see them both. the handle is going to be the one that's going to have to take the biggest sort of space, since it is the biggest mesh in here. Then I can take the horns, drag them in. Actually, I can just pack islands. Well, that's the same thing really, what I did. Okay, so now we can just turn them around for, let's say, 90 degrees and just drop them in there. And again, they're inside the UV tile set, so that's good. It's a very sort of like rough UVs laid down, but this is not hard. These are not hard, hard surfaces where you can use all these little small, snippets of everything and just fill in all the rectangles and everything. So the last ones now is they're the crystals, which by the way we haven't yet unwrapped or we haven't yet adjusted the geometry either, which is a bit upsetting. And I can see there's some sort of overlap in here, which I'm not sure what's going on. As you can see, there just seems to be some sort of a problem with how the mesh is laid out. It's almost as if it's double. So yeah, very, very weird that this has happened. I'm not sure why. You can see that if I pull it out, it does come out with no problem, but anyway, I'll probably be able to delete all those faces without any consequence. Yeah, see, that was quite an interesting turn of events, isn't it? So I'm not sure what's happened with Zbrush when we exported these, but nothing that a little bit of cleanup can't do. So same thing, just clearly got a bit of a problem here because I'm selecting everything. So I'm just trying to select by normal. Yeah, there we go, and now I can just delete it. No, normal wasn't the right approach, it seems. Yeah, so this crystal isn't looking too good. So what I'm going to do actually, I'm just going to select everything and just delete entirely, okay? And then I can just select this crystal, duplicate it, bring it above, rotate it, make it smaller, get it to fit in there better, and probably just increase its size a little bit. Obviously I'm gonna have to have a look at the high poly model, and then I can just delete these from over here, which is fine. Yeah, that should be okay. Now we do want these crystals to be independently probably textured, so we're just going to keep them like that. We're not going to duplicate them all the time. We're only going to duplicate them from left to right, but we're not duplicating each of them individually. We will bring the high poly in to just ensure that this shape is sort of fitting that one, which should be okay. So now we've got the crystals, and we also got the blade to worry about. So with the blade selected, that's where we have it. Again, we can just pack the islands in here. As you can see, this one is obviously getting a lot of attention. So let's just try and pack the islands without that part. This is how big this can be, but this is in essence, this is going to sort of tell Zbrush, well, it's going to tell Blender that I want these shapes to be sort of almost equal in texture size. But you see, if you do this diagonally like that, you can actually have a lot more texture on this blade just by doing them more diagonally. Something like that, okay. And then we can also bring this up here, diagonally increase it even further. Something like that, yeah, that should be fine. And we can now take this part, bring it down here and make it smaller, since it is the smallest piece of them all. Okay, and then we just want to drop those crystals maybe in here, or we could drop them into the into one of the texture somewhere else. So the blade itself has got no material, unfortunately, of this blade, but the blade will remain on its own sort of material. So I'm just gonna select over here blade low, as the materials are already made. The crystal, and so the horns is on the same one with a handle. So I'm just going to move on to handle low. The pommel is with the head, which we already have set up. The horns, head, handle are all done. So crystal is gonna go probably with the handle as well. So I'm just going to change the materials over to handle. And we want to start unwrapping them, but to begin with we want to bring that high poly in just to ensure that they match up. So now with that done, we can have a look at our crystal low over here, and as you can see there's clearly a difference. I'm just going to drag this in and just scale on the x-axis, and that sort of builds around the character, right? Just get it a bit like that. These polygons from here can be deleted entirely, which is okay. Yeah, okay, and now we've got obviously these points over here which would need a bit more thickening on the x-axis, most likely like that. And when we look at it, you know, we're trying to see if it all matches up. Yeah, as you can see, it's not exactly lined up properly. Let's just take the we'll just take both of these and isolate them. Okay, so this is our low poly. So this is where we sort of bring it in edit mode, not in object mode. You want to be in edit mode so you don't change the pivot point or anything like that. Okay, and this is how we line it up. Not too bad, it's not too bad. Let's just thicken it over here as well again. Then we want to do it over on this side. Okay, something like that. So when we go out of isolation, we can have a look again. Is there anything in here that just doesn't seem to fit? To be honest, I think we're okay. If we're not, then there's not a lot of modifications that we need to do in order to ensure that this is going to be better. But I think we're okay with us. Yeah, this way. And got to ensure that it is going. You see, these points here are not ideal, these 2 points, because we want them to go a bit. You see how the crystal sort of like comes out. Honestly, these crystals, I can't believe they're probably the biggest issue that I've got right now. And I've managed to press the tab button when I was having both the high and the low poly selected. Yeah, okay, so let's just have a look. Probably just want to bring it down a notch. Honestly, these crystals, okay. Probably was a better, you know, a better way here. I could have just duplicated the high poly one as well, and then would have just fitted, not to makeshift this one that I'm doing right now. But it is what it is. Sometimes we do pick the most, you know, non-logical paths to achieve something. But it is what it is. Okay, so that looks a bit better now. Retopology, next level retopology right here, guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. All right, okay, so just bringing out these points as well. Yeah, okay, hopefully that'll be okay. I mean, honestly, these crystals are just the bane of my existence. I'll probably clean them up later if I can, but I'm just not in the mood to do that. Right, okay, so we've got the high poly, the crystal. We can now go and select all of these, and what we want to do is potentially, you know, you can see that it's sort of gone all the way around, which is great. We can select this as well, which is gone all the way around again. I love it. And then this one over here, which has gone all the way around again. What we want to do is isolate them and just have a look, because it's not gone all the way around as I thought. Okay, now it has. So selecting this point. Okay, so that's fine there. And now, okay, like that. And let's just mark some seams. Go into vertex mode and unwrap. Okay, there we go. Got some nice little guys in here. Okay, so with these selected, let's just take them out. And we said we're gonna put it with this with a handle. So gotta select them both. But we've got to make sure that we're out of isolation before selecting them both. And we can take all these crystals, scale them down, bring them over here, and just make them definitely bigger. So at this point, you can, you know, sort of like take them out, separate them, you know, just to get more geometry. I would say this size is more than adequate for them. You know, something like that. Again, efficiency of texture space isn't exactly something that I'm aiming for here. It's more of a, these are the basics of it. It's not, definitely not exemplary work, but this is what you can do to get the job done. So we've got the crystals with the handle, the head with the horns, and the pommel with the head as well. Sorry, the head with the pommel, the horns with the handle, and the crystal as well, and the blade is on its own. So this is now the low poly that we wanted, and we can just start exporting it and going into Substance Painter to be able to finish off our mesh. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video on how to unwrap and do a bit of cleanup on the Z-remeshing of our model. I hope you've learned something. I've definitely have. There's definitely things in here that I've seen I had to overcome while doing this tutorial. Again, speed has been of the essence in here, so I've really tried to move as quickly as possible without skipping too much on details. I normally work, as you can imagine, a lot quicker on this. But again, if you guys enjoyed this episode, just please like, subscribe, comment on my video, and thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay tuned for the final episode of texturing this blade. Thank you for watching.